Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining this session. So I would like to, as I said, discuss about how to prepare for an interview. Let me just bring my slides up. Please let me know when you can see it. Let me just get up. Apologies. Let me see. Okay, share screen. Right. Okay. Just let me know when you can see it. I just want to make it a slideshow.
Yeah, Jennifer, your slide is on.
Okay, perfect. So let me just make it a slideshow so we can start. Okay. Right. So thank you for the introduction. So again, it's this about me is what has already been covered, just for you guys to know. So in this session, we're going to talk about how to prepare for an interview, the types of interviews they are, the process behind the preparation, strategic interview techniques that you can implement while preparing for an interview and also while you actually are in the interview. And again, I'll give you my top 10 interview questions that I think will be very, very useful when you're taking part in an interview. So what I want to really talk about as well is understanding that we are in an economic crisis where organizations are being very, very strategic about who they hire. Back in the days, it was a case of we need somebody to start, we need someone, let's just recruit. Now, if you've noticed during your own job search, is that the roles are not very many because organizations are being very careful about who they hire to make sure that they're hiring the right person. So right now, organizations are looking for people who can adopt new methodologies and also who can adapt to new cultures. So yes, it's about your technical ability, but it's also about how you can thrive in different environments. So preparation is very, very key. So, of course, we've all had interviews at some stage of our career, and there are varied types of interviews from screening, informational interviews, behavioral-based interviews. So screening interviews usually your first stage. So this is what organizations use to find out, am I going to interview this person? Yes or no? Am I going to take them to the next stage? So with screening interviews, it's usually to gauge your communication skills. So how well does this person communicate? How well do they talk about their expertise? So that's usually the first stage. And from there, they will know whether they're going to continue the process or not. So preparing for a telephone interview is like an open exam. There is no real right or wrong answer. What they're trying to ascertain is, how confident is this individual? What are their expertise? How well do they describe their expertise? So there's no way you could really plan for a screening, but try to be as elaborative with your answers and with your your exploration when you're asking the interviewer questions, right? So that's for the screening. Informative interviews are pretty much similar things, but they just that's a gathering session. So they're just trying to gather your expertise. They're just trying to understand how sharp is this individual. And then the behavioral-based interviews are more about your thought process. So how has this person gone from point A to B to C? Some of them come up in informative interviews, some of them come up in screening, but behavioral based is less about your technical skills and more about your thought process. And then, which I believe most of you would have probably encountered during interviews or even within your alumni, is task or testing based interviews. So obviously from a data analysis or from a data perspective or an AI perspective, they want to understand how technical you are. So a lot of these tests, what I would say is utilize online resources, hackathons, group activities, data communities. Always be ready to evolve in your expertise. Never stop learning, because as you keep on going on in your career, different exams, different tests are going to take place, and they're going to take a lot of your time in order to understand how technical are you. So you have to continue to develop yourself all the time. So testing is very, very key. So always enhance your skills at all times. Then you have the stress interviews. So some organizations, what they do is they like to see how well you work under pressure. So in terms of the kind of questions they ask you, they might be very sharp. They're not, again, no right or wrong answers, but they want to see how you work under pressure. Because in the environment that we're in right now, pressure is everywhere. So they need to understand that you can thrive in pressurized environments. So what they do is try to test you in the interview to see how well you do under pressure. So in that term, keep calm. So that's that. So the next topic I want to talk about is plan. The plan is the process behind the preparation. So a lot of people go for interviews and say, okay, because I'm good at X, Y, and Z, I'm going to ace this interview. But you have to prepare adequately for that interview. So once your CV is submitted, that's only half of the work done for you. Your CV gets you an interview, but doesn't guarantee you the job. So you have to plan in order to ensure that you're successful in the interview. So I've abbreviated plan into an abbreviation that you can easily remember. So P is for planning your strategy. L is for leveraging on your expertise. A is for ascertaining your market. And N is to negotiate with precision. So I'm going to break down what each of these things mean. So planning your strategy, when you're researching an organization, you have to be very strategic about what you research. It's not just about, oh, the CEO's name is this, they have offices in X, Y, and Z. You know, it's more than that. Everybody knows that, right? When you're planning, you have to research about the organization in detail. So look at things like, what was their annual turnover last year and the year before? Who are their competitors? What kind of products and services have they launched recently? You know, what is the brand strength? What are their weaknesses? So maybe an organization's strength could be that, you know, based on how many countries they have a global presence, and maybe their weakness could be in a particular area that competitors are operating better than them. So you have to look at, you know, strategic questions. What technologies do they use within the organization? All of these things can be found on LinkedIn. You know, what other business intelligence, market intelligence do they have? So apart from who are their competitors, what is going on with them in the market? How knowledgeable are they? How is their presence? These are the kind of things you need to research to stand out from everybody else, because you want to show an organization that you just don't want any job. You want this job. You don't just want to work for any organization. You want to work for this organization. So the kind of research you do shows any employer that I want to work for you. I've taken my time to research about your organization in particular, and that will come through to an organization when you do strategic research. The second one is leverage on your expertise. So you have to look at yourself and conduct a SWOT analysis on yourself and say, what are my strengths? What are the areas in data or AI? What are my strengths in specific areas? And what are my weaknesses? You know, what are the things that I need to develop on? I don't really like calling them weaknesses. I call them areas of development. So what are the areas that I can develop in? You know, what are the opportunities that have come about in my career, or what are the opportunities that I've seen that I've leveraged on? And at the same time, look at the threats. So by not developing one area of my expertise, how is that going to affect me as a professional? So you have to look at yourself and understand where your strengths are and your weaknesses, or should I say areas of development, and see how you can leverage on them when you're selling yourself. So as I've given an example here, so my strength is in data mining, but my area of development may be in partitioning. But however, if I've participated in hackathons, I've been able to develop that skill. And I know that that particular skill might be very, very, sought after in the market. So I've had to develop my skill so that I can be an expert in that craft. So overall, I will be a professional, right? So you have to look at where you can sell yourself and also apply for roles where your strengths are the ones that are going to open the door for you. And A is to ascertain your market. So look at your industry. So for example, an AI specialist or a data specialist in financial services is different from a data specialist within healthcare. Because even though what you're doing is the same, the market is different. So the kind of data you're collecting or the kind of artificial intelligence that you're implementing will differ because of the sector. So you have to understand where does your skill set fit within that market? So how do I compare to, how do I compare from financial service to healthcare to hospitality? You have to understand what your sector does and how your expertise affect that sector. So you have to ascertain your market and know where you fit and know where you need to develop, because organizations are really looking for people who can come in and hit the ground running. They need to know that you know about your industry, not just your expertise as a data specialist or an AI specialist, but how do you know what your expertise will do in that market? So you have to understand how that market works. And then N is to negotiate with precision. So don't be caught off guard. Employers will ask you in an interview, so what is your salary expectations? And you have to be able to defend that properly. You have to be able to say, these are my expertise, these are my years of experience, this is what I know about my market, and with all of these information, this is what I can bring to your organization. If you answer that correctly, what you're demanding for your expertise will be given to you because you've understood your value and your worth. So that's what plan is. So as I said, it's to plan, it's to prepare your strategy, leverage, ascertain your market, and negotiate with position. Now, examples of how to prepare from a question perspective. When you're going into an interview, 40% is your preparation, and the other 60 is your delivery. So for every question, you have to have an example of when you have done something. So come up with examples before you go into the interview. And these examples should be, some should be monetary, some should be examples of where you've worked as a team. Some could be examples of where you've led a project or where the leadership skills have been demonstrated. You have to have examples of where you've demonstrated your expertise. So where have you worked on something where your expertise really came out? You have to also have examples of when you've managed a difficult situation. I'm sure some of you have been in interviews and they've said, oh, tell me about a time you've dealt with a difficult task, or tell me about a time you've worked with a difficult colleague. You have to always have examples ready. Have an example of some of your weaknesses and areas of development and how you handled it. And also have an example of when you've taken initiative to benefit an organization. So with all of these examples, they will come up in an interview. So you have to be ready. And you don't have to wait for them to ask you, oh, tell me an example of when you have. Because once you are prepared, it shows that not only are you, excelling in your expertise, but you understand the different areas of development that you need to implement. So with every question in an interview, there is a reason behind it. So you have to ask yourself, what is the interviewer trying to find out? I mean, are they trying to find out my technicalities? Are they trying to find out my leadership skills? Or are they trying to, what is the objective of this question? So once you've kind of deciphered what they're trying to get, then you need to implement something called SIMS. Now, SIMS is an acronym that will help you answer any interview question that has been thrown at you. So what does SIMS mean? So one of them is S is for the STAR methodology. So the STAR methodology helps you answer questions concisely without waffling. Because a lot of people, for example, they say, tell me about yourself. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, my name is Jennifer. I'm the second child of my mom when I was 2. That's not what they want to know. What they want to know is, who are you and what do you want to do within your career? My name is Jennifer. I'm an HR consultant. I've been in this sector for 20 years. I've been doing, they want you to be concise. So the STAR methodology helps you to be concise with your answers. So if they say, tell me about a time when you've worked on a difficult project, you talk about the situation. So the situation could be, while I was working in organization A, I was asked to do X, Y, and Z. So that set the scene. That's the situation. The task is, what were you asked to do? Were you asked to do data mining? Were you asked to analyze this? What is the task you were given? And the action, how did you do it? So what system did you use? What processes? What technical skills did you implement? Did you have to liaise with different departments? Mention this because it shows teamwork. They want to know, what did you do? And as a result of what you did, How did it improve you as a professional? And how did it impact the business? So you have to take it a step-by-step guide, as if they have no understanding of your expertise, because it shows that you are an expert in your area if you're able to walk someone through step by step. So that's the STAR methodology. I is identifying objectives with opportunities. So how do you do this? So you would have looked at the job spec, and maybe as I've given an example here, maybe they've asked you to, extract or transform, processes and so on using an application. You would now walk through the interview, through the process of how you did that. So they might say, oh, tell me about a time you've worked on a project. You will take a bullet point from the job spec and talk about it as you have done it. So I've walked through, I've taken data, I've implemented processes. You're going to walk them through because they need to understand that you are an expert. You know what you're talking about. You've taken the objective from the job spec and you found an opportunity in order to talk about it, to show your level of expertise. So always find an example that you have pulled from the job spec. And M is marrying expectations with experience. So in an interview, the employer will always tell you what to expect. So, okay, in this role, we want somebody who's going to handle projects. We want somebody who's going to implement X, Y, and Z. We need someone who's going to be able to translate data that everybody will be able to understand. What you then do is you take that expectation and you show them the experience you have, even if you haven't got loads and loads of years of experience. But even if you participated in hackathons or you've had some sort of experience in that way, you tell them, oh, yes, actually, I have had experience doing X, Y, and Z. And you use the STAR methodology to walk them through their expectation of you and the experience that you've had. So always look for opportunities within an interview to meet the expectations that the role requires. So always look out. Lots of times, interviewers will tell you what they're looking for in a role. And then you have to take that opportunity to show them that the experience that you have. Now, this is my favorite one, actually. So selling yourself using reverse questioning. So this is a psychological thing, right? Because you have to understand that every opportunity to sell yourself, you need to grab it with both hands. So when I say reverse questioning, what I'm saying is you don't ask the question first, you sell yourself and then ask the question. So for example, if an employer says, do you have any questions? Which I'm going to go to that section later, but I'm just going to use it for the sake of this particular example. So if an employer says to me, do I have any questions? I will say, yes. I'm somebody who likes to hit the ground running. I'm somebody who likes to get stuck in. I'm somebody who likes to liaise with different departments to understand how the organization works. So saying that, what is the most important thing I can accomplish within the first 90 days? Can you see what I've done there? I've sold myself first, then I've asked the question. But psychologically, our brain is programmed to listen to the first thing that has been said within the first 3 seconds. And then the question comes after. So even though you're going to answer the question as an employer, the first thing you're going to remember is what I've said in the first 3 seconds, which is, I'm somebody who likes to hit the ground running. I'm somebody who likes to liaise with different departments. So what is the most important thing I can accomplish within the first 90 days if I'm successful, right? So automatically, they're going to answer that question, but they've remembered what you said first. So you're selling yourself, but they don't realize you've sold yourself. They're focusing on the question, but you've sold yourself at the same time. So always try to find instances where you can sell yourself outside of the standard interview. So I've just kind of broken it down. STAR methodology is S, identifying objectives with opportunity is I, M is marrying expectations with experience, and S is selling yourself using reverse questioning. So I've come to the end of the session, but what I will also do is send you guys my top 10 interview questions on the slides so that you can use that to practice. I'm also available on any of the social media, so you can reach out to me with any kind of questions or anything that you feel that you're struggling with in terms of interviewing. But the most important thing I will also say when you are preparing for an interview is always have your guards up. So guards in the sense of always remember that there could be a question that will lead off the back of another question. So always have plenty of examples. I can't stress how important it is to have prepared examples because you can't really determine what questions are coming at you, but you can prepare for what may come before you. So you always have to have a question that leads on to a question. And if you answer using the STAR methodology, I can guarantee you, no matter how long-winded your questions, your answers are, you would have answered them concisely and given the interviewer everything that you need in order for them to decide, yes, I want to move forward with this candidate. So don't be afraid. Always plan for every interview. Planning is key. And in terms of your research, look for strategic information, not what everybody is going to look for. So it shows that you want to work for that organization. And at the same time, when you're preparing your questions as well, make sure that they are very strategic. So ask questions like, if I'm successful, as I said, what will be expected of me with the first 90 days? What are the career opportunities within this organization? What kind of departments would I be liaising with? Show them that you really are about that organization, not that you're just looking for a job. You want to work with one organization doing this particular role. I hope you enjoyed my session, and I do, and I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a lot of insight. That was a lot of learning. I picked a lot myself. The plan, the STAR methodology, conduct SWOT analysis. Don't be caught off guard. Oh, she has said a lot of things. And we know that interview is one thing all of us must pass through. If you are going to even work for a company, you must go through interview phase. And that is why this session is so good. So please, if you have any question for Jennifer, you can drop it on the chat. I'll pick it up and ask her. As you are dropping question, I also want some interactivity on the chat. If you know one thing or two that you picked from Jennifer's presentation, you can drop it on the chat. If you know what you learned, because she has actually said a lot here. She taught, gave an example, she said a lot. So I hope this session is something we all remember. I hope this session is something we learn from, because this is something we cannot all run from as far as we are in the workspace. Okay, so while I'm waiting for questions, you can drop on the chat for those online what you have learned from Jennifer's session. Also, there is any so this is an appreciation message. Okay. Yeah, please drop more. We are looking forward to questions. If you have any question, please drop so that Jennifer can help throw more light to your questions. Thank you. If anybody have any question for Jennifer, please can you drop your question with me here right now so I can ask that. No question. This is how to go for an interview we are talking about here. Drop your question. No. Yes, so ask your question. Yeah. Okay. Anybody has a question here? So he asks, after an interview, and the interviewer is asking you to rate him, to rate the interviewer. Okay. So I'm an interviewer, and after an interview, I ask the person I'm interviewing to rate me. So he's asking, should you rate, or what? Maybe rate me the scale of 1 to 10. How should we rate my interviewer?
Okay, so if they ask you to rate, what I would say is I wouldn't put a number. I'll be very strategic with my answer and say, I believe I did well to the best of my ability. So what do you think? So you turn the question back on them, right? So you've answered, but you haven't put a figurative put a figure to it. So talk from more of a general perspective and then reverse the question back, because what you don't want to be caught doing is rating yourself too high and thinking, okay, right, I'm overconfident, and then rating yourself low because you're trying to be modest. So you have to stay in the middle by saying, I think I did well to the best of my ability. I feel like I answered the questions correctly. I feel like we really got on well. So what do you think? So then now you've answered and you've now thrown the question back, but you have escaped putting a number on your performance.
Okay, so the question is not rating myself as somebody that goes for the interview. The question is me rating my interviewer. Should somebody do that?
Oh, the interviewer, right. So I just say, yeah, so I've kind of answered it to a certain degree in the sense of you say, oh, I think that we had a very great conversation. I think that the way the way you conducted the interview, I think that you talk more about the positives of the interviewer without putting a number, is what I'm trying to say. So you don't necessarily, if the interviewer wants you to rate them that is interviewing you, then you need to talk about the positive sides without putting a number to it. So just try to summarize, because they know every question, as I said in my presentation, has an agenda. So they want to see, probably trying to see how your response will be to a direct question like that. So try and be more general with your answer and maybe applaud them, based on the kind of conversation that you've had. But I wouldn't advise putting a number to it, because it might be a trick question.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very good answer. There's another question that said, how many pages is expected in our CV or resume? How many pages?
This is a good question. So for me, I always believe, even as an entry level candidate, I believe everybody should be able to write a 3-page CV. The reason why I say this, especially even as an entry level person, sometimes even 4 or 5 as a senior person. So it does depend on the level of expertise, but there's a reason why I say even as an entry level candidate, 3 pages is very okay. Reason why I say this is because I give this example in other webinars that I do, which is if you are a CEO of Tesla and you want somebody who is going to manage your millions, right? And I walk into your office with a 2-page CV or a 1-page CV and you're going to manage my millions, would you give me a job? The truth is no, because I can't see how you got to the stage you are. So I didn't see, were you an accountant? Were you a finance manager? Were you a director? What gives you that ability to manage my money? And it's the same thing that goes for an entry-level candidate. We need to know exactly what skills you have. What systems have you learned? How do you do something? Even if you write your CV using the STAR methodology, before you write everything, you will see that you've probably covered 3 pages. An interviewer, a CV should be able to speak for you in a room where you're not present. Because I have to see before I want to meet you, I need to know that you're qualified for the job. So if you're writing one-worded bullet points, there's nothing there that tells me that you're qualified for the job. It doesn't tell me what systems you've used. It doesn't tell me what market intelligence you're exposed to. It doesn't tell me anything. What the CV does is supposed to tell me a lot about you so that when I meet you, it's more I'm putting the CV to the face. I don't have time to ask you, oh, have you worked on this? Oh, have you worked on that? If I receive if I receive over 5 million CVs, I don't have time to be going through one after the other. So the more expansive your experience is on paper, the likelihood you are to be shortlisted for an interview.
Okay, that's a very, very good one. Okay, somebody said, I'm very anxious, please. How can I manage myself during an interview when you're a very anxious person?
Okay, so first and foremost, you have to calm down. And you need to also, you have to reassure yourself and say, if they didn't like you, if they didn't feel that you have the expertise, they wouldn't have invited you for an interview. So you've already overcome the first hurdle. If they've asked you to come for an interview, it means that there's something about your experience on that piece of paper that makes them interested in you. That means they believe you have the potential to do the job. So firstly, calm down. Secondly, try and practice. So find a colleague and, try and have practice runs, okay? Practice how you would answer questions, practice, the more practice you have, the calmer you will be. But you have to have that confidence in yourself to say, I can do this job. And the reason why they've called me for an interview, it's because they can see that I have the expertise. So it's all down to your self-confidence. You have to have that belief that you can do it. Even if you go for interviews and they say, oh, sorry, you're unsuccessful, that doesn't mean it's your expertise. It could be that it's just a wrong fit in terms of culture, in terms of the role. It just could be it's a wrong fit, but you have to have that confidence in yourself first. So don't be too anxious. Just think that I can do this role and they've called me for a reason.
Okay, so I'm going to be taking just one more question. There's a lot, but I'm just going to take the last one. So it says, how do I deal with a situation where the job description doesn't match the job title? For instance, a data analyst role with a data engineer's job description.
Okay, so what you need to understand is, apart from don't really focus so much on the job title, but look at the job description, what the role actually entails. Because what you need to understand is, in some organizations, there are some smaller organizations where they don't have as much bodies. Some roles intertwine. So it might be a data analyst and an engineer in smaller companies because they don't have the manpower, but in maybe larger banks, they have a lot more, defined structure to their organization. So focus more on what the objective of the role as opposed to their job title. So for example, in banking, if you come across a marketing executive, generally that's an entry level position, right? But at the same time, a marketing executive is also a C-level position and they have the same job title. So it's not necessarily about the title, but look into the job description and see exactly where the skills are required and where they match. And even when you go to the interview and when you're preparing, you have to speak from both perspectives. So if you see an analyst and an engineer objective, when you're interviewing, combine the two. Express your expertise as an analyst and also express your expertise as an engineer, because some of these roles may intertwine depending on the size of the organization.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. This is a very amazing session and everybody's excited. You've shared so much insight for us and we are very grateful. So please can we appreciate Jennifer one more time?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. So this
Thank you.
at the end of this session, she has shared media handle. You can follow her up on social media for any further question.